How big is your window of tolerance? How much can you handle? Do you lose it? Do you have a short circuit? Do you have a small bandwidth of stress in life when it happens to you? Do you find some days are easier to tolerate things and some days not so much? Dr. Daniel Siegel has a wonderful metaphor for our perfect state of arousal or ability to function within our window of tolerance. This is a really simple visual. If you can imagine, if this was the top of the window and this is the bottom, everything within is within the window of tolerance. So as your day goes, as life happens, the normal ups and downs, this is the perfect state of arousal, so to speak. You can function and really be able to stay regulated within your window of tolerance. Our windows of tolerance are different. Everybody's window of tolerance is different, and on different days our windows of tolerance, our individual windows, can be different. Some days my window's this big and I can tolerate a lot. Some days my window's this big and I lose it. I either get hyper aroused, I go above the window, my window, or I get hypo aroused, I go below my window. This is a great image that represents. So this is our window. Some things in life that happen can be within the window, but I just got thrown up above my window of tolerance. It got too much above my window. I get hyper aroused. I'm in that hyper aroused state. Or I might fall below. Whatever situation here might push me below my window of tolerance. I'm hypo aroused. I'm in a low state. I'm going to read some of these descriptions here. If you Google the definition, the simple definition of the window of tolerance, it says the window of tolerance is a term used to describe the zone of arousal in which a person is able to function most effectively. When people are within this zone, like we talked about, when people are within their zone of tolerance, they are typically able to readily receive, process, and integrate information and otherwise respond to the demands of everyday life without that much difficulty. So I guess it's pretty easy to understand that the bigger our window, the more we can tolerate. The smaller our window, the less we can tolerate, the more we lose it, so to speak. And trauma, things that are happening, stress can really shrink our window of tolerance. We hear people say all the time, I can't even handle her. I can't even handle that. I can't handle him, meaning he is not within my window of tolerance, whatever this circumstance, right? When you walk into work and you're hyper aroused or hypo aroused, you either shut down or you get anxious and you lose it or flip the lid, so to speak. There's another definition here. There's a lot of really great free PDFs on the window of tolerance, but again, it says developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel, a clinical professor of psychiatry. The window of tolerance describes the best state of arousal or stimulation in which we are able to function and thrive in everyday life. When we exist within our window of tolerance, we're able to learn effectively, relate well to ourselves and others. However, if we move outside of our window, we can become hyper aroused or hypo aroused. When something stimulates or arouses us outside of our window of tolerance, we can become hyper aroused or hypo aroused. And when we are hyper aroused out of our window, when we're thrown right above, it can look like high energy, anxiety, anger, overwhelm, hypervigilance, fight or flight, or chaotic. And when we're hypo aroused, it can look like being shut down, feeling numb, depression, being passive, withdrawn, freezing, or feeling shame. I want you to really think about how big your window of tolerance is, and does it fluctuate throughout the day? A really great example one of my colleagues used was in the morning, their window of tolerance is really small. When they get up in the morning, say you stub your foot, you can really lose it because the window's really small. Stubbing your foot took you right up into anxiety or anger or irritation. But if it was in the middle of your day, perhaps your window was a little bigger and you stubbed your foot and you're like, oh, okay, oh, wow, that really hurt, but I'm fine. I'm not going to lose it. So pay attention to, first of all, how big your window of tolerance is. How much do you fluctuate? How much do you get hyper aroused or how much do you get hypo aroused? Do you shut down often? Do you get irritated and angry often? That's an indication that your window might be really small. And again, stress, trauma, these can be factors in how big or small our window of tolerance is. This goes on to further explain hyperarousal results from the fight or flight response and is characterized by excessive activation and energy. It can present as difficulties concentrating, irritability, anger, angry outbursts, panic, constant anxiety, easily scared or startled, self-destructive behaviors. And then the other one is hypoarousal, results from the freeze slash faint or flop and drop, as it says, response where there is a sense of shutting down or dissociation. This can present as exhaustion, depression, flat affect, numbness, and disconnection. I want you to notice these tendencies in yourself. Are you thrown out of your window of tolerance throughout your day when life's ups and downs happen? Are you able to regulate? Are you able to handle it? Or do you find yourself thrown up or down, out of your window of tolerance? I love this example. There is actually a PDF. I'm going to add it to our stories if you want to check out our stories, and I'll leave it in the saved highlights of our stories as well under resources, and I'll put the link to this document I'm looking at right now. I hope you understood that quick explanation of the window of tolerance by Dr. Dan Siegel. So always remember, every given day and throughout the day, our window of what we can tolerate can be this big, this big. It can fluctuate throughout the day. But depending on how big or small our window of tolerance, what we can tolerate without losing it or shutting down, getting hyper-aroused or hypo-aroused, it will depend on kind of the more we understand ourselves, the work we do. Therapy can help, meditation, reflection. Sara posted a beautiful post on our Instagram here. And I'm going to actually try to look it up. She had really great, actually, I'll look on my phone. She had really great examples of the window of tolerance. So she says, working with a therapist can help us open this window of tolerance and cope with trauma. And then what closes our window is our trauma, stress, and kind of the reactive responses we have when something comes at us. Do you find yourself startled easily? People say you overreact? That can be just a stress or a trauma response. So I hope you enjoyed this, your window of tolerance. Pay attention. There's other words that we use all the time, like, oh, he had a short circuit. I had a short circuit. She had a short circuit. My bandwidth, I don't have a lot of bandwidth today. I'm empty. My gas tank is empty on grace. I have zero grace for anybody, including myself. So there's many different metaphors we can use for how much we're able to tolerate. Depending on the stimulus and the arousal that's coming from the outside world, it's very important to expand our window of tolerance so that we can remain regulated and functioning throughout our day. But if we find ourselves really irritated and agitated and mad and angry and snappy, that's a clear indication that we're being shoved out of our window of tolerance. So is your window of tolerance like this? How can we get it a little bit bigger so that we can tolerate more? As always, Psychology Today is a wonderful resource to look for a therapist that's a good fit for you if you have to work through trauma or current stressors that are in your life. There's a lot of free resources on YouTube. And like I said, I will add the PDF, the document that I was reading from today, in the link here. So I hope you enjoyed that. Happy Therapy Thursday, learning about the window of tolerance. And we will see you guys next time.